Good evening. Welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for November 6th, 2023. City Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Mayor Robinson.
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse.
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Here.
Councilmember Lee. Here. Councilmember Robertson.
I'm here.
Councilmember Stokes.
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn.
Here.
Mr. Zimmerman, we don't allow signs. Yeah, you know that. Okay, Councilmember Robertson, could you please lead us in the flag salutes?
Certainly. Would everyone please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have two proclamations today. The first one is Diwali, the Festival of Lights proclamation, which is going to be read by our Deputy Mayor. And we have Pranaya Hart, who works in our Community Development Department, and Lalita Upala, Community Director and Vice President of the India Association of Western Washington. To accept, and Lalita will introduce our special guest who will receive the proclamation on behalf of Indian American Community Services. So the Deputy Mayor will read. We'll have you accept and speak, and then we'll all do a picture.
Sounds great. All right, well, it's my honor to read the proclamation this evening. So it states, whereas Diwali, the Festival of Lights, is celebrated annually by Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, and Buddhists in Bellevue and around the world, and whereas Diwali also marks the beginning of the new year and is celebrated over 5 days, each with its own significance and traditions. And whereas the word Diwali is a shortened version of the Sanskrit word Deepavali, which means a row of lamps, during Diwali, celebrants light small oil lamps called diyas, place them around the home, and pray for health, knowledge, and peace. And whereas Diwali reminds us Bellevue is home to many faiths and traditions and that our diversity makes us stronger. And whereas the City of Bellevue acknowledges the historic and current contributions of the South Asian community and supports Diwali celebrations and their promotion of arts, culture, community, participation, inclusiveness, and social and cultural connectiveness. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of Bellevue, Washington, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 12, 2023 as Diwali, the Festival of Lights, in Bellevue, and encourage all community members to celebrate Diwali's message of bringing light to the world through tolerance, compassion, and building bridges of understanding. Signed, Lynn Robinson.
Thank you. So Pranaya and Lalita and your special guest and Dr. Whitehead.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. We really appreciate this recognition of this very important festival in the Indian culture. I'm honored to have with us a colleague, Pranaya Hart, and I think Lalita really and truly needs no introduction. She is a very outspoken, pronounced advocate in the community, and we greatly appreciate her. And just a slight plug, she is a part of the communities of color. So we thank her for that. But this is a very important festival, a very important holiday, and I will turn it over to Lalita to introduce our very special guest.
Thank you, honored members of the Bellevue City Council. We so appreciate this message, the proclamation, and thank you, Dr. Robertson, for being including us today. I do want to take this opportunity to include an introduction for Dr. Pran Vahi, who is the Seniors Program Director for the Indian American Community Services. Dr. Pran Vahi is one of our founding members and has volunteered for the community in the last 39 years. And it is my honor today that we have him present to accept this proclamation, because he embodies the vision of being inclusive, being compassionate, and really being respectful for everyone and for all cultures who today reside to make Bellevue thrive. So, Dr. Pran Wahi.
Thank you. It is my honor to receive this proclamation on behalf of our community. And thank you very much to making it Bellevue City's, hopefully, annual proclamation. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Let's do a picture. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Would you like to do the second?
I take that back. I'm so sorry. We have another proclamation, Lung Cancer Awareness Month, which is going to be read by Councilmember Stokes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Proclamation, whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and whereas 90% of lung cancer deaths in the U.S. are due to smoking and secondhand smoke, and whereas Washington State ranks above average in lung cancer survival rates when compared with other states, but below average in the percentage of cases that receive treatment after diagnosis. And whereas, according to the American Lung Association, more than half of people with lung cancer die within 1 year of being diagnosed, as the majority of cases are diagnosed in later stages. However, the 5-year survival rate for lung cancer is 56% for cases detected when the disease is still localized within the lungs. And whereas screening for individuals at high risk, even without symptoms, can dramatically improve lung cancer survival rates by finding the disease at an earlier stage, which is more likely to be curable. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2023 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in Bellevue to increase awareness of the severity of this disease and emphasize the importance of screening among high-risk individuals. More information about recently updated guidelines for lung cancer screening eligibility is at cancer.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Thank you. Yes, Mayor, there are 6 pre-registered speakers this evening. And so before I start calling names, I'll go over a few of the rules that council has put in place for oral communications. Roll call is for a period.
You're cutting out.
Not sure what's going on with our mics. We're having a little bit of an issue. So oral communications is for a period of more than 30 minutes, and topics must relate to the city of Bellevue government. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'm going to, I can't do it without the mic, unfortunately, because the audio won't
I can
pick
hear
it
you
up.
now.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Do you want
We
someone
may
else to read
switch it out here really quick. Okay. 1 second. This is a very short microphone. Okay, so oral communications is for a period of no more than 30 minutes, and all topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. The person speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then the person speaking to items. Then people speaking on items not on tonight's agenda will be called. The presiding officer, and just the mayor in this case, has authority to prioritize speakers in both of these categories. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak, and only 3 speakers will be allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. With that, I'm going to call our first speaker, and that is Jody Alberts, who I believe is joining us virtually. Ms. Alberts, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, and council members. This evening, I'm commenting on behalf of the Chamber Plush Committee regarding the proposed LUCA that would allow extensions of design review approvals. I'd first like to thank council and staff for addressing this item this evening. Given the market cooling that we're experiencing, the added flexibility will help to support industry as projects navigate changing building codes. Such efforts are not insignificant in promoting development in Bellevue now and in the years ahead. So again, thank you. To keep our city competitive and to effectively respond to the current market conditions, we would suggest that council consider what surrounding jurisdictions are offering in terms of extensions. For example, the city of Seattle actually just issued notice of their MUP extensions of 3 years, which will be in effect until 2026. In other words, extensions effectively until the year 2032. These extensions are automatic for all projects rather than requiring input from city staff on a case-by-case basis. Redmond, in contrast, does have broad discretion in permitting such extensions, but there is no limit to the number of extensions that can be granted to a project. Bellevue does notably, however, appear to be the most stringent of the 3. The amendment before you this evening allows a maximum extension of 2 years and only in what the city would deem as extenuating circumstances. To ensure Bellevue is seen as competitive, we ask the city consider options such as the following. 1, automatically extending all ADR permits issued from now through the end of next year. 2, incorporating ADR extensions administratively into the building code. And 3, extending ADRs to 4 years as a counter to Seattle's 3. We really appreciate, again, the City Council and city staff dedicating time and thought to this effort to keep Bellevue competitive and development occurring during this time of economic uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Catherine Robbins. It looks like Ms. Robbins is also joining us virtually. Can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Okay, perfect. My name is Catherine Robbins. I am thankful the Bellevue City Council is updating Bellevue tree codes. I have lived in South Bellevue for over 20 years and have seen a lot of environmental and development changes to my neighborhood and the surrounding area. In the last 5 years, in my cul-de-sac, I have seen 5 mega houses erected. They are classified as single-family units, with the largest having 8 bedrooms, which is owned by a corporation providing employee housing and is vacant for long periods of time. The tree canopy in my cul-de-sac has decreased significantly, some through the construction of these large houses, and then when the new residents move in, removing further trees. I was given an explanation by a new resident that they removed the trees in front of their house closer to the street despite having a 2-car garage because they were concerned that SAP would harm their cars. Relating to my own property, recently my new neighbor had a tree service file permits to remove 2 trees on my property. I was alarmed that a tree service would file permits without my consent and at my neighbor's request. The trees that she would like removed are not the trees I would have chosen for removal. There is a double top fir tree with a trunk circumference of 4.5 feet that is right along the road and next to power lines. That is on my property. That tree was likely a sapling when Newport was first clear cut. As I am low income right now, I cannot afford to remove my hazardous tree. It was estimated to cost $5,000 8 years ago to remove the tree, and I do not have those funds even in my emergency account. These are some of the concerns that I wanted to share regarding current activities in my area and property. I hope I have illustrated several areas of concern for what Bellevue residents are experiencing right now. I love trees. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker on the list is Joe Kunzler. Mr. Kunzler, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Thank you for your public service. Joe Kunzler here. I'm here tonight to address the Code of Ethics and the Ethics Officer, and I will attempt to keep my comments within those boundaries. As part of preparing for tonight's sortie, the night before election night, I actually read your Code of Ethics and have it in front of me right now. The Code of Ethics makes clear that everyone who is on the City Council shall comply with federal, state, and city laws in the performance of their public duties. These laws include, but are not limited to, ... laws pertaining to ... election campaigns, financial disclosures, and open processes of government, end quote. There is an individual running for City Council who is been found by the Public Disclosure Commission to owe them over $30,000 in fines from 4 different complaints. And I think it's ethical that you know that Alex Zimmerman is that person. But that's me. I think you should know. I do hope that whoever the ethics officer is willing to give classes to any potential candidate, future candidate, or elected official on compliance with all of the federal, state, and city laws. I also hope your next ethics officer, in the event that Mr. Zimmerman is elected tomorrow night, is ready to conduct many investigations late into the night and endorse a brand of coffee. I'm sure that will be very entertaining and bring more revenue to the best city in Washington, with the best mayor in Marilyn Robinson, and the best booster of Ukraine-American relations in Deputy Mayor Jared, whose last name I can't pronounce to save my mother's life. So you must know it's pretty bad. My speech is pretty bad. I do want to conclude on this thought. The election ends tomorrow night at 8:00 p.m. Please make sure you vote. May God continue to bless America and protect Bellevue. Am Israel Chai, and of course, Slava Ukraini, because we're not going to give our freedom to some effing terrorist like Alex Zimmerman. Thank you for your public service.
The next speaker on our list is Nicole Myers, who I believe is in person. Thank you.
Hello. After all the drama and suspense at the most recent City Council meeting, I want to apologize in advance for raising this again. But I hope that when you reconsider the vesting options provided under Ordinance 6760, that you might also be able to reduce the potential for undesirable building designs to be constructed 10 years from now, long after that temporary 6-month IOC is over. In addition to the change from 2.5 to 4 bonus square feet for every square foot of affordable housing, this ordinance allows buildings in the downtown perimeter to have a couple extra floors. A building 25 feet higher would get 2 floors with high penthouse ceilings and protected views across Lake Washington, Seattle, and the Olympics, or of Mount Rainier. In addition, the lot coverage allowed would increase and the setbacks would be reduced by 15 feet, which means that the builders could actually enlarge the building by more than 2 floors of additional space. As a city, I think we have step back rules because the benefit to one building is outweighed by the impact on its neighbors and on the experience of the street. So I don't really think this particular incentive is justified. It was mentioned that no economic analysis has been done to make sure we're getting new affordable housing in a reasonable proportion to the generous terms of the ordinance. And I share Mayor Robinson's disappointment that only 6% of the new units will be affordable. It's unclear whether those units are even a comparable size to the others. Without an economic analysis, I think we can just look at the enthusiasm shown by potential participants who, in the last 6 months, have proposed to build over 5,000 housing units under these rules. The generosity of the ordinance is great. I agree that we should try to juice construction of both market rate and affordable housing, but especially if we have 8 extra years of extended vesting allowed, it moves away from the original intent of supporting shovel-ready projects in a defined area. And in summary, I think the height, the lot coverage bonus, the parking exemption, and the FAR incentives are valuable enough that we can both require a higher ratio of affordable square footage and eliminate the clause about the step backs. There might also be tax implications if sites hold on to an authorization like this for years without being subject to an official upzone. And I hope that, when we go forward with the meeting on the 27th to consider extending the time horizon, that these vesting options will be valid through, that you will consider tweaking it a little bit just to make sure that, to the extent possible, we don't, lose our step back requirements that benefit the city. Thank you very much.
The next speaker on our list is
Zimmerman,
Patrick.
Please do not interrupt. That's a warning.
Next speaker on our list is Patrick Sathyanathan. Mr. Sathyanathan, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Your time begins now.
I'm sorry, are you calling upon me to speak?
Yes, we are. Your time begins now.
Hi, my name is Patrick Sathyanathan. Good evening to the City Council, the Mayor, and all attendees, and a happy Deepavali to everybody. I am that middle-aged, pot-bellied, bald East Indian male who keeps complaining about the Bellevue police, and these terms are used in the incident reports by the Bellevue police in describing me, and they are greatly skilled in creative writing, as I have many exhibits to show that they are. Today I will talk again about an interesting incident that occurred in January of 2019. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. An incident occurred in January 29 where officers Michael Kidd and Brenda Johnson arrested me violently for not committing any crime. What led to this, you might ask? The NORCOM transcript of the incident. For those of you who might not be aware, NORCOM is the central dispatch system. A transcript of that conversation for that incident between 911, central dispatch, and police officers is very interesting. It's conflated. It's like a cut and paste job. It starts off with somebody committing some violent act somewhere with a stick or something, and then there's a description of another violent act somewhere, and then suddenly I get into the picture, me who just went to pick up my car from a towing agency, and that is enough cause for half a dozen police officers. Police cars, and not all of them police cars, a few rental cars, just ordinary cars, some with just lights stuck on top of them. We all know about the friends and family policy that the Bellevue police have. Anybody can tag along. And finally, many guns are pointed at my head while I'm sitting unarmed inside my Jeep. All I wanted to do was go inside my home and talk to them on the phone. They said, no, we are going to point guns at your head. It is only recently I've discovered that's a serious use of force, excessive use of force. And when I complain to the Bellevue Office of Accountability, they say false arrest, excessive use of force, all the video from my neighbor's surveillance cameras clumsily edited to delete the portion with all the guns pointed at me. That's all fine. You see, it's already been investigated and closed. Or if I complain again, somebody filed it away, and whoever filed it away did nothing wrong. That's wonderful logic. That's what I have to face. from your Office of Accountability. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our final speaker on our pre-registered list is Alex Zimmerman.
Is this camera not working?
It's working.
Is working? Yeah, thank you very much. I only check it.
I just want to, before you start, Mr. Zimmerman, I know we have some Boy Scouts in the room, and I want to welcome you here tonight and thank you for being here. And we do have free speech here in this chamber, and there are 99.9% of our speakers are able to express themselves without offensive language, but there are those who cannot or choose not to, and we have to allow that because it's a freedom of speech. So I just want to warn you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I very appreciate you. Yeah, I speak 4,000 times. I know how you working, all of it. Yeah. The Heil, my lovely, damn Nazi Gestapo pig and anti-Semite. My name is Alex Zimmerman, and I live in Bellevue for 35 years. For 30 years, I fighting with Democrat mafia, a pure bandita and anti-Semite. So situation right now very interesting because we have war right now between two civilizations. I think this very important, very dangerous war. From one side is Jew and Christian, from another side is a Muslim. It's a two different civilizations. One civilization progressive, another civilization barbarian. So as this I bring this picture, you know what it means, what is you can see, you know what it means, kidnapped 3-year-old Jewish people, you know what means Jewish baby, Palestinian did this. Question right now very simple because I come from place, you know what it means, what is Second War in German Nazi, kill many Jew, you know what it means. Kidnapping 3-year-old babies like this, you know what it means. It's not be barbarian. It's more dangerous than Nazi. They are mentally sick psychopath. You understand what I'm talking? It's very important. But what's happened here in Seattle, in King Country, this place right now, what is have officially, I repeat this, officially have government anti-Semitism. And I give you classic example so you don't know what has happened. Because I have experience, and my family have experience with German Nazi government anti-Semitism, Soviet Union government anti-Semitism, so accept me like an expert, you know what I mean? And I'm too old for BS. So listen to me very quick. 3 not-profit organization make a week ago a big meeting for pro-Palestinian. Situation very simple right now because these 3 not-profit organizations subsidized by King Country Council. So this a government right now, fascism we have. We have government anti-Semitism. Is this a taxpayer money? What is King Country Council? All democratic mafia, a pure Nazi, no question about this. Support 3 not-profit organization, taxpayer money. Why you give my money to my enemy who want kill Jew? Huh? Can you explain to me? I speak right now to everybody. Stand up, America. 2 civilization, win. Jewish, Christian civilization is best of the best. What is I know for the last 5,000 years? Thank you very much.
That does bring us to the end of our pre-registered list, and we do still have a few minutes left of oral communications. I would ask at this point if there's anyone joining us in the audience who would like to make a comment to the council, or anyone online who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Sir, if you would like to come forward. If you can identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Neil Christensen. I'm a long-term resident of Bellevue, and I'm a merit badge counselor for the Boy Scouts, and I appreciate Mayor Robinson recognizing the Boy Scouts are here. I brought 13 Boy Scouts today for the Citizenship in the Community merit badge, and one of the requirements is to attend a city or county council meeting like this and see how our government operates. And I just wanted the young men to stand up, the 13 young men that are here, please. And I appreciate the comments and the items that have been made before. We will have to leave at about a little before 7, but it's great to see our government in action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. If you want to get a picture, you could line up in front of us and we can do a quick photo op.
I did not see any other additional hands, Mayor, so at this point I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next up, we have the report of the city manager, Mr. Miyake.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I have one item under the manager's report this evening, and that is an overview and an update of the city's winter preparedness and response program. Just by way of background, the city's transportation department staff have been working hard to prepare for another winter season coming up, including looking for ways to continually improve our services to the public. Here to review that program with you is Chris Long, Assistant Director for Mobility and Operations with our Transportation Department. With that, I'll hand it off to Chris.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and Council for having me back today. And I really appreciate you opening this opportunity to us each year to really celebrate the hard work that our staff puts in to prepare for a winter season every year. Their preparations start back in the middle of summer as we start stockpiling and testing all of our equipment and making sure everything's ready to go. So it's a long process to get to where we are today. So to start the recap, we always start with what the forecast looks like. And this year we actually have something different to report. As you may have heard, we're looking at a El Nino year. And when that's coming out of 3 straight years of La Nina, which was very different and something we hadn't experienced in a while. So with an El Nino, what this results in is the storms coming off the Pacific typically head a little further south. And so the wetter weather heads into Southern California and Mexico. And we see a little warmer weather coming into our area. So the forecast would give an idea that we may see a few less storms and they could be a little warmer. But as always, we prepare as if we were going to get a major snowstorm like we have the last 4 consecutive years. And I'm proud to say that as of November 1st, we are winter weather ready. So what it means to get ready is a multi-department response. We have 4 departments to participate in our program. Transportation takes the lead on snow and ice, with parks providing services at city buildings, including fire stations. FAM leading the fleet maintenance, so they make sure all our trucks are ready to hit the road, and if an incident happens, to get them back on the road and repaired. And then utilities, who deals with flooding, so they got their first test on Saturday, and also provide a significant number of the staff that help with our plow operations. Transportation Department only has 27 individuals in streets, and it takes 60 to run a storm event. So when we're in 24-hour operations, so the other half is all support staff from parks, utilities, and finance and asset management. So another new element for this year is we had Bellevue TV come out and record all of the classroom training that we did. We've had a lot of turnover in our staff, and we have multiple openings that we're actively filling right now, and we want to be able to get those people up to speed as quickly as the minute they walk in the door, so they're ready to get out there and help in a winter event. So that was an exciting addition to this year. A couple other new items that we're doing this year. We are deploying 5 weather sensors around the city to help support our contractor that provides us a very specific Bellevue-oriented localized forecast. So they'll get more accurate information about Bellevue, but the weather sensors also provide us with roadway temperature information. And that's important when we're doing anti-icing. So that's where we go out and we spray the hills of Bellevue and some of the bridges early in the morning to make sure that they don't frost over once traffic hits. And there's a specific temperature that it has to be done at. Otherwise, if it's too warm, it could actually make the road more slick. So this gives us the ability to make our roads a little bit safer, and also the opportunity to maybe save a little bit of that liquid if it turns out that not every spot is at the same condition. Another new element is our winter weather response map. So we did actually launch this last year. We had one event that we were able to apply it to under a beta condition, but this is now ready to roll as a regular part of our information that we give to the public. And this is reporting when the last time a road has been serviced by a plow in time increments of 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, and then over 12 hours. So it's not only a tool that the public can look at to see if the arterial near their neighborhood has been plowed, but our staff is also using it as a way to double check their information on which routes have been completed. So last little recap on what we experienced last year. We had our first snow event in December, which was a citywide event that hit about 4 to 6 inches across the city. But some of you may remember on the morning of December 23rd when we woke up to a half inch of ice coating everything in the city. And that was a really unique event for Bellevue. Fortunately, our trucks and sanders are prepared for that. They all run studded tires, so they were able to get out in the hills and apply our hot sand to the roads, so we could start seeing that ice melt. And I believe by noon we had all our arterials open again. So that was a big accomplishment. Another unique element of last year's storm is we had a pretty heavy snow dump that hit above 500 feet. And usually when we see the storms that are higher in elevation, we just get a dusting or a couple of inches. But it was about 7+ inches that stuck around for a while. And one of the problems we discovered is we can only run our smaller 1-ton trucks, as you see in this photo, up in the hills. And our larger dump trucks, the 5 and 7 yarders, are way too big to try to deal with those hills. And we were our plan to get more trucks into the hills this year, knowing that we're looking at a slightly warmer winter, so we may not have those citywide events, is we're working with the Parks Department to get their trucks outfitted to what we need to navigate those hills, so that when they don't have to plow fire stations that are all below 500 feet, we can get their trucks up in the hills as well, so that we're ready for those higher elevation storms. And then the last thing I want to share is just some of the feedback we got last year. Our public information officers do a great job of getting information out on our events and on the snow events. And we received a lot of kudos this last year for getting the roads back open, especially after that ice event. It's really appreciated by the public, and our staff really, it keeps them motivated when they see these types of comments coming in when they're doing consecutive 12-hour shifts. So that's it for this year's weather. So we're ready to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So the next item, we don't actually have to ask for permission for remote participation, but out of habit and courtesy to my colleagues, I am going to be gone next Monday. So I'm asking for approval to participate remotely and for the deputy mayor to run the meeting for me.
Would you like to do the formal motion of that?
No.
Okay.
Is that a yes or a no?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. We're all good with that? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and then on to the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We have 2 study session items today. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce them?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council members. The first study session agenda topic is a proposed amendment to the Land Use Code to allow greater flexibility for developers in response to council feedback we received at a council meeting earlier this year. Specifically, the proposed code amendment would allow the director to extend the design review approval period under certain circumstances. After the presentation this evening, staff are seeking council feedback as well as consideration to schedule a public hearing on on the proposed land use code amendments. Joining us this evening at the table are Liz Stead, Land Use Director, and to her left is Nick Whipple, Code and Policy Director, both from the Development Services Department. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Liz.
Great, thank you, City Manager Miyake. For tonight's presentation, we are here to share a proposal on a land use code amendment to extend design review approvals. This item was initiated by you all, and you retained processing of this code amendment on March 13th this past year. For those of you following along with the attachment, I do want to just note attachment A is in fact the strike draft. We got a little overzealous and accepted the changes ahead of time by accident, so it doesn't read like a typical strike draft, so our apologies there for any confusion that may have created. But that is a new section that's proposed in the design review section of the land use code, which Liz will go into more detail about. I'll turn it over to Liz.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Nguyen, House Council. So we're excited to come back with a second phase, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we are looking for direction tonight for input and to direct staff to prepare the proposed LUCA for public hearing at a future meeting. So no council action beyond input is looked for this evening. We're looking forward to a good, robust conversation about the potential options for this. There we go. So for the agenda tonight, we're going to go through the background and then talk about the components of a potential LUCA, and then the objectives.
Excuse me just for a minute, Liz. You know, apparently they're having trouble hearing, so we'll try to turn up the volume. It's not you, it's the sound system.
Okay, we'll try this again. So we're going to start with the background. We'll go through the components of a proposed LUCA, the objectives of that LUCA, and then we will talk about the process moving forward and what direction we are looking for. So as Nick mentioned, on March 13th of 2023, I think it was actually Nick and I were both here, and we were talking to you about some other code amendments as well, or some other extended vesting through an ordinance for building permits and clear and grade permits. And at that time, we noted that another area that might be good to look at were the design review process and whether we could look to extend the administrative design reviews as their vesting. When people put their process together for an administrative design review, it's quite extensive time frame for processing, and it's also a big financial commitment. So we wanted to see if we could assist the industry at this time as we look at the different things that are going on right now with the economic headwinds, which are really not in development's favor at this particular point in time, but we know that these cycles come and go. So we are actually proposing that this be a permanent code amendment in the land use code to provide additional flexibility to the development community. Right now, our current process, we have design review approvals which expire, and that's in the land use code in section 2040-500. Right now, you have 2 years. So when a design review approval is granted, you have 2 years from the date of that approval to either apply for a building permit, have a complete building permit application, or it expires. So we don't have any ability to extend that vesting at this particular point in time. So the building permit application does need to come in within that time, and then you're vested to the provisions of the land use code that you were first reviewed and approved under. Some of the components that we're looking at is to create some opportunities. So we would be looking to amend Part 2030F, and that is the section that Nick was discussing as he mentioned the attachment. And there's different things that we were recommending that you think about. One of those is, when is the timing of a request for an extension? We were recommending that we have that timing be close to the expiration of the original design review, and we had talked about that happening sometime between 0 and 44 days prior to the expiration of the design review, so that there is that idea that people are looking at this and saying, okay, here I am, I know I need to have this, and then coming to us so that we can have that conversation. We talked about some different ideas of when you allow an extension. We looked at different jurisdictions, and there are a lot of different ways you can do this. So again, a good topic for our conversation this evening. But a couple of things that we looked at was also our existing land use code and how we have it delineated in other sections of the code. So currently you can extend a critical areas land use permit, shoreline permit. To do that, we have always had some criteria, and so we would recommend that you look at that. The criteria that we had mentioned were unforeseen circumstances and when expiration will result in unreasonable hardship. Those are pretty broad terms, and we have applied them pretty broadly in the past. So we have understood that people are going to come in, and it could be an economic condition, it could be a financing condition, it could be that the market's changing and they really don't know which direction to move, and they might want to change a few things in their project. So we've tried to be very flexible about that in the past for other types of projects, and would assume that if council directs us to keep that criteria in the final code amendment, that we would do the same then. The time limitation that we were recommending after looking at other jurisdictions was up to 2-year extension. We talked about we could grant multiple extensions, but we had recommended that it not exceed 4 years total. So from the day that you received your design review approval, you could potentially have up to 4 years versus the 2 that we currently have. So to put this in a bar graph, just to kind of try and explain it well, right now, if you have your design review approval issued at the end of the review stage in blue, you currently have 2 years at which point the design review expires. And that means you would need to come back and start again if you wanted to build that project and you had not had a chance to apply for your building permits. Our proposed process is that at the end of 2 years, shortly before the end of 2 years, you could ask for an extension. That extension could be up to 2 years. So the applicant would be granted potentially a complete 4 years after their initial, so doubling the amount of time that we currently allow for the vesting. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Nick to take us home.
Great. Thanks, Liz. So just to note some of the objectives with this land use code amendment, as Liz mentioned, this would provide some consistency in our extension practices that are currently afforded to other projects, such as the critical areas land use permits and our shoreline permits. We also have extension processes for design reviews that are associated with master development plans. So this is really addressing those standalone design review projects. It also would allow for additional time for applicants to complete their projects. So we are hearing that current 2-year time limit may be too abbreviated. So this extension would give a little more time and honor really the extensive planning and preparation by applicants and the in-depth review that happens by development services staff. And re-permitting a project can be costly and inefficient for both the city and the applicant. So this is looking to provide some of that relief on deadline pressures. And then lastly, we're looking at balancing some of the flexibility for projects and the public purposes of new land use regulations. So the proposed code amendment does allow or would allow for a 2-year extension. So that does essentially double the life of the design review application, allowing a design review to remain vested during the period, the 4-year term basically that would be afforded to the project. So that means that design review projects that reach that approval milestone and are granted an extension are assured that any code changes would not apply to their project for the term of that design review approval. So it's important because council will be considering a number of code amendments as we're looking to update the periodic update, going through our periodic update of our comprehensive plan and then addressing some of the comprehensive plan changes with land use code amendments. So looking at how we might plan for more housing and affordable housing, this would provide some assurances to projects that are ready to go now or plan to go in the near future to proceed under those regulations that are in place right now. So to touch on the process for this code amendment, as we mentioned on March 13th, you all retained processing of this code amendment. So this will follow the process for City Council legislative action process. So that includes a notice of application as well as a notice of public hearing if you all direct us to schedule that public hearing. So tonight is really intended to get input from you all. We're also seeking that direction to schedule the public hearing if you feel ready to do so, and that can be scheduled at a future date. So with that, Mayor, I will turn this back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you so much for being here this evening and the great presentation. And I'm glad that we're showing the flexibility that that we want to show developers in terms of when they do hit some challenging times or challenging economic times. So this is I'm just thrilled that this is coming back before us. So I have two questions. So one, I understand that you did do some, or it sounds like you did some due diligence in looking at other municipalities. I just want to be clear because while I heard other cities do other extensions or different process or different length of extensions, I wasn't quite clear on why we landed on 2 years. Why not 3 years? Why not 4 years? As Jody Alberts mentioned earlier, I really want to make sure that Bellevue stays very competitive in this instance as well. So what is the downside of extending to 3 years or 4 years rather than the recommended 2 years? That's my first question.
I can start with that. And
Thank you.
Can add in if he needs to. So we did do our due diligence and the other East Side neighbors. The 2 years taking us to a total of 4 years was actually pretty much in the middle of what we found around. And I know Seattle is just now talking about going up to 6 years. They were 5. So we were, pretty close. Each jurisdiction has a little bit different way they apply this. Mm-hmm. So in Seattle, for example, previously you would need to actually extend your vesting, but only if you extend the design review approval, only if you still met the code. So in their circumstance, if the code changed, you couldn't extend your approval. So in our circumstance, we're saying we'll kind of keep you at the same code for a longer period of time. So there are a lot of different ways you can do this, but we chose kind of a middle ground, really, when we were looking at it. And we'd be happy to come back with more information on that at the public hearing of what the different jurisdictions are doing. But you asked kind of a bigger question, I think, which is around what is the value of more time or less time? And it really is, how far do you want to get out away from new codes? So as an example, if you have a 4-year vesting period for a design review and the land use code changed, maybe a year into it, you would be 3 years out from that land use code change, which would not apply. Mm-hmm. And then you would, if somebody waited the whole 4 years essentially, and then made their building permit application, that's probably another 2 years. So you're looking about 6 years before they start construction, and then during construction. So the further out you get, the less ability you have to make that development consistent with the policy direction of the council as you move forward in time. So it's a balancing act, as Nick mentioned before. You want to balance the needs of the customer and, to their ability to react to current development, right, but at the same time balancing the council's direction in policy and wanting to make sure that the projects that are being built are consistent with that policy.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's very, very, very helpful. So the other question that I had that I just want a little bit more insight onto is the interpretation of the code, because I think another area of being competitive is for us to be predictable as well with this. And I think where we have, I think, previously run into problems sometimes with our code is that it can be interpreted a number of different ways. And, unforeseen circumstances or conditions or unreasonable hardship. Well, you could have 4 different people look at that and all have a different opinion. Does it, rise to the level of being a hardship or unforeseen circumstances? So This one, gives me pause. It gives me concern. I guess I would be okay then if we moved forward, or I'd love to get more information on this or get some feedback during the public outreach of, maybe limit it to 2 years, but then what would be the downside of almost having like an automatic extension versus them having to meet some type of hardship where it's not clearly defined what that hardship is. And I could see a lot of different scenarios where to them it's a hardship, but maybe to the city it's not, or vice versa. So that would be something that I'd be interested in seeing during that public outreach piece, is if we could make it automatic. And I'd love to get your interpretation or your thoughts on that as well. Any downside, again, any downside to doing an automatic extension versus holding them to this interpretation or this definition, which again seems a little bit outside of what other municipalities are doing. They seem to be a little bit more lenient. That's my interpretation. Maybe not yours, but could you speak to that as well?
I can speak a little bit, and also very, very happy to bring back more information on it as well.
Thank you.
But certainly, part of it, as I mentioned earlier, is we are looking for some consistency in our code, and we do have in other code sections where we allow for extensions to vesting, we do have some criteria. So we were trying to keep the framework of how we have it, but at the same time, make it a very liberal word. I think your point is absolutely well taken, that depending on who is looking at that, they may or may not have the same idea about what is hardship. Now, I know in the past we have been very liberal with what we consider a hardship, because we do recognize that we don't know everything that's going on in the development community and so on. So, but certainly that's a point. We can look into that a little bit more further.
Okay. Yes, I'd be in favor of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. So I appreciate this coming forward. I definitely would like some more information when it comes back. I would echo Deputy Mayor's comments about having predictability in the code, and you had commented about consistency. Consistency and predictability are things that make it easier for people to build and invest and get financing so they can build and invest. And I think we should make it easier for people to invest the millions of dollars they want to in building Bellevue. So that's just from my perspective. So a couple of things that I think would be really helpful. And I'm sorry if I don't know enough. I do not do any work on development in Bellevue because I'm a council member. So I don't really know how our codes work in terms of development. So you had said that we have extension provisions in the critical areas, shoreline management plan and master development plan procedures all have extension provisions. So I think it would be helpful, and you're welcome to launch into it tonight or bring it back, for me and the rest of the council and the public to have an understanding of how this might work. I don't even know, I could read the code, all of the projects that require administrative design review, what it entails, and how it connects with the other permits. So, for example, say someone wants to do a 3-tower project, if they would get an MDP, would the administrative design review then vest for the length of the MDP period? Or if the master development plan is for a 7-year build out, would they have to go get a series of administrative design review approvals? I don't even know what they get in what order. I know building permits are last, right? The grading and planning, site plans are first, building permits are last, but how the rest, entitlements in Bellevue, work in between, I don't know. So I think it would be helpful for me to understand how the administrative design review permit slots into the process, so that I can evaluate how this code might be most effectively modified. So, and what it does vest to. I would assume that vesting or extended vesting, it doesn't vest to building codes, it just vests to land use codes, right? So if they get 2 extensions and the building code changes or the electrical code changes, they have to still build to the building code. The reason I think it might be nice to have the extended vesting is that if people are building phased projects, having that same look and feel and consistency within the development, I think is a benefit. It gives us a better, more high quality, cohesive built environment. And so that's why I think extending ADR from a policy perspective is a good idea. It also makes it easier for people to invest. A lot of projects are not moving forward because they don't pencil. Allowing people more time to figure out their financing so it does pencil, I think, is a good thing. Some ideas I have, and I would defer to you when it comes back, on clarification, as Deputy Mayor mentioned about the unforeseen circumstances, well, unforeseen by who, or conditions, and it's not just hardship, but it's unreasonable hardship. So what hardship, how much hardship is reasonable? So to have some either better explanation or language in there that defines that so that the code is understandable and predictable, or if you're saying that we liberally construe requests for extension, you could either have another clause in here that says that, that Section B will be liberally construed to provide, additional time, in most cases, or something like that. It should be liberally construed in favor of the applicant to get the extension, or you could just have it be they will get the extension upon request unless, and then you could say in the conditions that they won't, if they're being, if they're doing things that, are not consistent, if they have code violations on their site. Things like that, I think, would work really well. But it just needs to be clearer so that anyone reading the code who is getting their first design review approval, they know what to expect. If they're applying for an extension, they know what to expect. Because the last thing you want is for people to be spending money asking for extensions and getting themselves duly extended financially when they can't get it. So those are my comments, and feel free to weigh in tonight or just bring that back. I do think having a better understanding of how the administrative design review permit works with the other entitlements it'd be helpful to me.
So I'm going to weigh in here for a second. Thanks. It sounds like Councilmember Robertson is asking you to change the language, and so does that mean we need to have another meeting? So you bring this back?
Bringing this back for public hearing?
Well, I mean, maybe we have to have another meeting to determine whether we agree that that's how the land use code looks when we take it to a public hearing. So how different is what she's asking? How much change is she asking for here, in your opinion?
Mayor, I guess in my opinion, this could be accomplished potentially through providing some options for council to weigh at the public hearing. So we're reasonably noticing kind of what might be considered by the body. Mm-hmm. And then similar to past projects where you all have been able to select option A, B, or C, we can do perhaps a similar approach at the public hearing if that's of interest to you all.
Okay. Thank you. It would be of interest to me, and I don't know what I'm asking for. I just want more information and them to think about these perspectives and maybe come up with a recommendation.
Yeah, we don't know what they're going to bring back to us, which makes me nervous about having it all happen in that one meeting. So
I'd be happy to have a second study session if council thinks that's the appropriate way. Once we hear from everyone, maybe we could
either that or to do council briefings and get some feedback from everybody.
To do that.
Okay.
But if you had some feedback on what I'm asking for about how it all works tonight, that would be fine too. Thanks.
I can give you a brief kind of tutorial 101. So, and then I'm sure that we can come back with a more rehearsed and practiced response. But essentially, when you have a larger project encompassing multiple buildings, we generally have some requirements in the downtown code and that you have what we call a master development plan. And that gives us the ability to look at the whole project in its totality and understand how the buildings are going to work together, what the circulation is between the buildings, and just really kind of go deep on that so that we understand that these buildings will all work together, that there aren't traffic impacts that we're going to be concerned about, so on. We also look just briefly at unity of design in the master development plan stage. And when I say that, it's really more about how they work at the site plane. So as somebody is moving through the site, is there some consistency about how the buildings work and how you move between them? One of the options is to combine that with administrative design review for one or more of the buildings at the same time. So you can have a combined master development plan and ADR. At that point, we generally look at a 10-year up to 10-year vesting for the master development plan, and that is something that the applicant can request and is regularly granted, because we understand that when you're building out multiple buildings across a site, it takes some time. It's not something that's going to happen in 2 years. It takes a lot of time to get through all of that. And at the time, we generally look at the administrative design review for the buildings themselves and say, well, what do you need? How much time do you really need? We generally don't grant a full 10 years for the buildings themselves. But what will happen is the first building may have 4 or 5 years. The first 2 buildings may have 4 or 5 years. And then at the point that they're coming back in for ADRs for those other buildings, we would look at those individually. But they can apply for the design review anytime within that 10 years that the master development plan is vested. One of the reasons we don't like to give a 10-year vesting for a design review is that while, yes, there is a lot of, kind of uniformity of design, but we've also found over the years that plans change a lot in a relatively short period of time. So what somebody is interested in designing in 2023 is probably not going to be the same thing they're interested in designing in 2028. We do find the architectural styles change, the needs of the buildings, so thinking about residential versus commercial, all of that changes pretty dramatically in a fairly short period of time. So we found that generally shorter time frame for the building design review, longer time frame for the master development plan, so that people have some certainty. We know where our buildings are going to be located. We know what we can do. But trying to get, when we get to those design specifics, of pulling that back a little bit to a shorter period of time. But it's still, I think it's still pretty generous generally, but we do look to the development community to tell us, what do you need? What is the time period that you actually need to construct these buildings and, to get your building permits in the door? And we've had a good relationship so far, kind of understanding what people need, but trying to, again, keep that window not fully open, but semi-open, so that we can know that the projects are going to continue to respond to current policy direction as well.
Can I ask a follow-up, Mayor? I want to understand what you said, and that is, you said if they get ADR with the MDP, the ADR can be vested, you said, for 4 to 5 years?
Generally 4 to 5 years.
So when they're tied, so that's different than the 2-year?
Correct, and that's just because it's with the MDP.
I'm going to encourage you to take this conversation.
No, I just wanted to ask that one question.
I know, but
I would like a briefing on this.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Because I need to understand this. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for wanting to understand. I appreciate it. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. This is very helpful because we, don't see very many master development plans, and so having a better understanding of that would also be helpful to me as well. I was thinking about the public hearing. So have we actually already reached out to the development community? I know that we have the Bellevue Development Committee that's been stood up, because I am curious about what have we heard from them about this. I mean, certainly we've heard from the Bellevue Chamber as one voice into the space about some of their potential requests as options, but I'm wondering whether you could comment on whether we've done that work, or are we really relying on the public hearing to be the place for that? Because I agree with the fact that we do want predictability and we do want clarity. However, I think we all have also said that not all projects are the same. And I guess I would like to understand, I would think that developers are not purposely trying to slow walk, because projects cost money and cost escalation. And so when we think about having the the circumstances by which we would allow extensions. I guess I'm similar to my other colleagues. I'm really wondering about what are those restraints intended to serve? I mean, I heard a little bit about we want to have consistency. We don't want to have vesting of code that's really different than where we are. But I'd really like to understand what problem we're really trying to solve functionally and practically that we're seeing. And then I want to make sure I understand. So in slide 6, when it says up to 2-year extension shall not exceed 4 years total. So they normally would have 2 years. So they're only allowed to have one extension of 2 years. Is that how I'm reading that? So it is not one where if some other circumstance happens to them, that they wouldn't be able to request another extension. Is that correct?
Yes, as it's currently proposed, it would be a maximum of 4 years total. So you could have 2 extensions of 1 year each, but the total amount of time that would be allowed would be 4 years. And again, that's the, part of what we're looking for in this conversation is that feeling like the right number for the council and your considerations, but we certainly did base it on, again, the other East Side jurisdictions, then also that concern of getting too far away from new policy direction. So trying to strike a balance there.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if maybe it is one that first 2-year extension, since we are already quite liberal in how we interpret that is more of an automatic, and that maybe any additional ones would need to have some, hardship explanation. Might be a different way to look at that provides predictability, but also recognizing that there are potentially hardships that happen that we may not be able to predict today. So those were a couple things that I was thinking about, because ultimately it's about what risks we're trying to mitigate, and I think there's enough complexities whenever we are working with the development community. Let's not create any more ourselves. Thanks.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. This is extremely helpful. I really appreciate that. This is what we really need. You don't know what you don't know. So, and we're talking about a very important issue. It's how can we give you information or help you to sort through the process if we don't know. So your Building 101, it's very helpful also, not very much. I always trust the city of Bellevue, your staff, and how you work with the developers and how you understand our goal, of doing the best you can do, right? I mean, you are the experts. We have to trust you. And we're just the latecomers trying to figure out, what do we want? What do we think we need? But it's based on the input that we hear from developers and from you. And developers can be varied, can be many. They have motivations. They have different ideas, different purpose, different goal. So we need to know what our goal is, right? That's why we want flexibility, no question about it. We also want to have predictability, no question about it. So how much is what and what do we need to do depends on our goal. Ultimately, after 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, we need to know, are we going to accomplish what ultimately we want? But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of changes happening. We don't know what they may be, right? So I think that's important that we have a conversation. Maybe that's why you need to tell us. I'm going to be learning. I'm surprised that, even our expert land use lawyer has, some need to know some of the goal that we have, or what we will accomplish, and what are the mechanism to accomplish those goals. And you are the one that's doing it through this process. So I would like to have some idea of what the goals and objectives, and then I think that's number one thing, that we as council, we agree, right? And then we need to figure out with your recommendation, we need to do due diligence with other cities, but I'm not sure that's really the most important, legitimate, because they may have different goals. They may not even know what their goals are. We have a city that is particular. We are very proud of what we've done. So I really like to know that. And then what need to be in short 1 year, 2 year timeline. Even with the 2 year, you're already working with it. You already know which ones can be flexible, which ones can be extended, what other things that are going to achieve certain goals may not be. You may have to have constraints. That's what some of the constraints are here. That's what we're talking about. So I think there need to be that understanding so that we can determine what are the things we can be flexible about, what are the things that we need to have constraint about.
Okay.
So this is what I would like to do and I'd like to learn more. So thank you. This is the beginning for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I totally get what you're trying to balance here, as you mentioned, in terms of flexibility for developers and also maybe like predictability of outcome and development throughout the city as well, relative to our land use code. I guess, and I like the idea of having the criteria. I think it's helpful as a guidepost, if you will, for when to do something versus not. I guess the thought that came to mind for me is, and I don't know the rate at which land use code changes relative to projects, but I'd be interested in if there's something around extending if there hasn't been changes to the relevant land use codes, for example. In that sense, the future of that development, even after the extension, will be consistent with land use code anyway. And versus say, hey, look, land use code has changed significantly, so we actually need developers to snap to the changes given the significance of those changes in the land use code.
That is certainly one of the things we can explore. That was at least the Seattle model. It sounds like they may be pulling back from that. I haven't done enough research on it yet, but the model was that you could, keep your design review alive for longer, but if the code had changed and your project did not meet the new code changes, you would need to go back through. So that is one model to consider as well. I think we landed on just extending, really as trying to respond to the investment that development puts into these projects. They're spending years prior to us even seeing a project. They've probably been working on it for 6 months to a year. At the point we see it, then we, talk to them about it and go through the process for, anywhere from 1 to 3 years, depending on the complexity. So some of the master development plans that we see that have, we have one now that has 10 towers on it, and it's massive, and so it's a lot of work to get that right. So trying to honor that investment so that people do have some security as they move forward, that they would not have to go back and revise their plans, but that is the balancing act.
Yeah, and I guess I would just say this would be beyond whatever. Let's say if 4 is the total number of years that includes that one extension. Anything beyond that would be based on any changes, reviewing the land use code and seeing what the significance of changes have been. And I guess I would be interested as a follow-up in why Seattle is moving away from this model.
And to add, just because I did do some research on the Seattle model, okay. They are moving away briefly, at least the ordinance that's in front of their council. It looks to respond mainly to the pandemic kind of economic conditions, and so they have put a sunset on that extension, and then that would end in 2026, so projects can get approval up until 2026. After that, it reverts back to you get an automatic 3 years, and then you get an automatic 2 years if you meet the current code at the time of that 2-year renewal that happens. So they're looking to do a 6 years temporarily and then revert back. At least that's what is presented in the materials, still being discussed, I'm sure, by the council there.
Got it. And we're looking at a permanent change, so we could.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
And that permanent would be what, 4 years maybe? And in 4 years we could do something else?
No.
This is not, I'm trying to get this in context. I think we're over analyzing and complicating this. And this isn't the first time we've done this kind of thing, right? We've had rules about this and what the criteria is and everything else. So we're not inventing something new here in terms of, what the colors are, how many, in this complication thing where we're wanting to design the process ourselves, I'm saying from the council in a sense, and this is not as complicated. I don't think it's as complicated as we're trying to make it, because it is interesting. We want to know about this. It's kind of fun. But what you really need, what you're asking for simply is an extension time period for this particular, and it's not about building the thing. This is the first stage in this, right? So right now we have 2 years, and sometimes it's difficult to do that. So we're going to 4 years. And actually, when 4 years comes up, there are ways to, if necessary, to change that. But essentially, we're putting this out here, and people know that. And as you mentioned, we know that what we're building the city today is probably not what we were building 4 years ago. Certainly not 6 years ago, anyway. So it's fascinating, and it's nice to know, and nice to be able to say, well, we'd like to see it go this way and that way. But all they're really asking for is time, an extension, to do what they're working on, going from 2 to 4. And if we left it at 2, we wouldn't be coming and asking you to tell us what the criteria is. Maybe we can put a better criteria, or we want to look at it and see maybe 3 feet instead of 4 feet. And that's interesting to do, but I think we're going way over what we're being asked to do, what is needed to be done in terms of policy, in terms of practicality, and getting something, a code that people will be able to operate on and not go into great detail about what does this really mean? What do they mean when we came up with this criteria over here about should it be this shape or that shape kind of thing? It's a fascinating concept, so I think we're over analyzing it and over complicating it. And I don't think we really have to know all the detail of how this is done, because if we have to know the detail of everything's being done, everything's going to get very, very complicated. The policy set, the overall set, and then the staff is, what we have staff for, is to make it work, put it together. So I think, there are things you can bring back, but I just hope we cannot decide we want to make this a really big deal when it's not that complex.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember.
Well, I was trying to get a little at the same time as other people did, but I'm
okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to complicate things even further. So going back to our last meeting, we discussed an IOC, and I feel like these are related in some way, right? Am I right, or am I completely wrong about that? The reason I think it is because we have kind of an imperfect IOC in my mind, and somebody who is permitted under that IOC now, could they use this to get the 2 years and then an extension if they have adversity under this imperfect IOC?
So the imperfect IOC has a vesting section that is pretty tightly written that actually explicitly states the 2-year maximum.
So this does not apply to that.
Right.
Yes, we would still need to, the council would still need to make a change to the IOC if you wanted to have
Well, I'm asking if this that we're looking at applies to that temporary.
This conversation could potentially be carried forward to the IOC. So what you decide on the permanent code amendment might be what you all decide for the IOC.
Right.
Okay, but it doesn't as written.
It doesn't as written.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to ascertain. So on slide 6, I'm a little confused because unless I read it wrong, it looked to me like it said you can get multiple extensions, and then, where does it say that? But then it said, so may grant multiple extensions, but you're really only granting one extension. So why is that not consistent?
There may be a circumstance where one of our applicants asks for 2 one-year extensions, as an example.
Oh, okay.
But the maximum would be 4 years under this proposal.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the explanation. Okay, so I feel like there's more questions than answers tonight. And I'm really concerned about bringing this back for any decision, even though we're going to have a public hearing and we can hear more. So, Mr. Miyake, what would you suggest?
I think you have a couple options here, and one is we can bring this back for a further study session. Could also do briefings in preparation for the public hearing. I think it's the wish of the council in terms of how much information you'd like. I guess I'd also turn to the staff, to Rebecca, if you had any comments you'd like to make with this.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, members of the council, Rebecca Horner with Development Services. We do have a Bellevue Development Committee meeting next week, and we do plan on having this discussion with them again. And I think the feedback we've received tonight is great for a starting point for that discussion with the BDC specifically to get their input on these questions. I think it's possible that through that engagement and the briefings, we can bring it back for a decision. But I'm not sure that we have to make that decision tonight. I think we probably could shift based on what we hear and change the schedule. It's really up to you, but I do think that based on the feedback we have planned in the next couple of weeks, we can make the schedule as proposed.
Yeah, because, the motion here is on the proposed land use code amendment, which we don't know what it is. Right. So I think that I would like to try doing council member briefings and see if we can come to a consensus and then get it on the agenda to come back for the public hearing. So we'll have to ask for that after
Right after your briefings.
our briefings.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so we'll just
as well
stick
as I
that
think what I heard Rebecca mention, also going to the committee and getting additional feedback to help inform that would be useful.
Yeah, I think so too.
You agree, Diane?
Okay, so we will not take a vote on this tonight, but we will commit to learning more. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for the input.
Okay, Mr. Miyake, we have one more study session item.
Tonight, the last study session relates to the process of hiring an ethics officer for the city. And just by way of background, the council adopted back in 2013 a code of ethics, and that enabling ordinance required the city to hire an ethics officer, which it did. The contract for the most recent ethics officer has expired, and tonight's staff will review the steps the city would need to take to fill that role. I know they have some brief comments to make this evening in terms of presentation-wise, and I think we are looking for any feedback from the council as you move forward. So joining us this evening is Kathy Gerl, our city attorney with the city attorney's office, as well as Sujin Kim, assistant city attorney. Kathy or Sujina?
I'm here to just answer any questions as necessary. Sujin's going to make the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. We're here tonight to ask the Council to direct the City Attorney's Office to start the process to procure a new ethics officer contract. We've had a contract, but it's expired, and under our code, the ethics officer position is a contract position, not an employee. And the code also requires that ethics officer contracts be awarded only after the candidates are interviewed by the council and selected by unanimous vote. So I'll just briefly touch on the ethics code and the duties assigned by the ethics code to the ethics officer, and then I'll go over the proposed procurement plan. So as you know, the Ethics Code is at Chapter 3.92 of the Bellevue City Code. It was adopted in 2013 by the Council to promote public confidence in the integrity of local government. It applies to council members and public officials on advisory boards, commissions, and committees appointed by the Council. And when it comes to reviewing ethics complaints filed with the city clerk to make sufficiency determinations and issuing decisions about whether any violations of the code has been established, the code assigns those duties to an ethics officer. It also assigns the officer other duties, such as to provide advisory opinions on ethics issues of citywide interest upon request, and also to annually review the ethics code and training materials. Our proposed procurement plan is basically going to be guided by a scope of work that's consistent with the assignment of duties. The code requires that the officer be a lawyer with sufficient experience and training. The last time we advertised the contract opportunity, we used the formal RFP process, and we had only one law firm respond. Our plan is to advertise widely on sites where Washington lawyers are likely to see the ad and go lighter on requirements to respond, and hope for more responses this time. The city attorney's office and city clerk's office would screen the responses and arrange to have the council interview qualified candidates. Then the council would need to select the preferred candidate by taking the vote, which would need to be unanimous. The contract value is estimated to be between $50,000 and $100,000 for an initial 2-year term. The last contract was extended multiple times over 6 years. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you so much for that. It seems to me like a no-brainer that we would prefer to do it this way than hire somebody for triple the salary or the expense, or even more than that. So any issue? Okay, sounds good. Are you summing up or asking a question? Okay, go ahead.
What's happened to our current ethics officer? That's one question. Second question, what have we spent over the past years on the ethics officer?
Yes, sure. The ethics officer that the city had was with a law firm, and we had a contract that expired in the spring of 2022. The spend over 6 years, I believe, was about $126,000.
Total?
Yes.
Okay. Each year, can you tell us what each year, how much we spend?
Isn't it dependent on how much we used the ethics officer?
That gives me some sense of how much.
Yes, because it's an hourly rate.
Yeah.
So you will only
Wasn't a
spend
set
if you
annual
use their
fee.
services. So it depends on how much you
Can you
and the
give
boards
me
and
maybe
commissions.
separately? Let me know what is you expend each year for the last 6 years.
We could get
Each
that
year,
information
annually.
for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, yes, okay, go ahead.
So I think it's time, and I'm glad we're doing it. And I'm glad that we're going to specifically look for Washington lawyers, because our last ethics officer was in New York or something. I would advocate, I don't know what the scope of work is going to be, that one of the criteria we look at is how quickly they can respond. The last ethic officer was a bit slow and had to be nagged to get stuff done. So I would like to, it won't affect me, I'll be off the council, but I'd like the next council to have a more timely response, and then recommend you put it out on the Wasama listserv, because that's a great place to find people. Thanks.
I'm
totally
I'm
supportive.
going to support you in that also, that there be something that says, that the response time be within a certain time period.
Yeah, I think so.
Councilmember
Oh,
Zahn.
wait, one more question. You said we had to unanimously pick the person? Is that what you said?
That the code says unanimous vote.
Oh, I forgot that. I mean, we worked on it. That's great. I mean, it was before. I'm sure it will be again. Thanks.
Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues' comments about the timeliness and how quickly. I guess my question that I didn't see in here was, so what's the duration of this contract? Is it also 5-6 years?
We're asking for an initial 2-year term. I think it could be extended like the last one was.
Okay, so I would recommend that we have clauses in, so if they're working out, that instead of having to go back out again, that we have the opportunity to extend, 1-year terms X number of times, so we don't have to keep doing this again. And then I would say that the sooner the better, because if I look at this, it means that we have not done any periodic reviews of the Code of Ethics and training materials, clearly, since we haven't had someone since spring of 2022. And, we know we have some new council members that are going to be coming on, and I think it would be very helpful to make sure that, and we always have boards and commissions rotating with new people, just making sure that we have the latest information. So, and I think even though there is cost, it might be appropriate, as you said, that these are annual reviews. It doesn't really say annual in here, but in your remarks, you had mentioned potentially, an annual review to make sure that everything is still fresh and up to whatever RCWs might have been changed over time or case law.
Just to clarify, annual reviews of the code? Is that what
yes. Yeah, sorry, of the code, yes. Yeah, thank you.
Is that reasonable cost-wise? I don't want to ask for something that's going to make this not feasible for us.
I actually think the code contemplates annual reviews.
Okay,
of the code.
perfect. Good. Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wasn't quite clear on this. I think, I probably didn't hear council members on, but we don't have to, at the end of the 2-year period, we don't have to go out and we can just rehire the person, right?
Correct.
We don't have to keep going out with a hunt, so to speak.
Right, that's what I was mentioning, is that
Okay.
we could have, the RFP could say that it's good for X number of extensions, of 1-year extensions beyond the first 2 years, correct?
We can certainly set it up in a way that would allow for extensions, but would also allow the council the ability, if someone's not working out, to be able to not have to extend. So we can work with that concept. Yes.
Yeah, I think of 1 year, every year we have that review, and then we continue or not kind of thing, yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion?
There certainly is, Mayor. I move to direct the City Attorney's Office to commence the procurement process for Ethics Officer Legal Services along the lines recommended to comply with BCC Chapter 3.92.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, in your packet, there is written report from Parks and Community Services Board, their third quarter 2023 report and communication. It's a very good read, so I encourage you all to do that. And with that, we are adjourned.